un grand concert d'applaudissements. Merci.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us today, Eric. I'm very pleased to have this conversation with you today. Eric Schmidt, you are an entrepreneur, a philanthropist. You're known for your pivotal role in the growth of Google as the CEO and chairman from 2001 to 2011. You overseen its transformation from a small startup to a global tech giant. You also found the Special Competitive Studies project in 2021 focused on strengthening Americans' long-term AI and technological competitiveness in different areas, national security, economy, society. You and your wife, Wendy, you co-founded SCHMIDT Science, a non-profit organization working to advance science and technology. And your latest book is Genesis, Artificial Intelligence, Hope and the Human Spirit, that you co-written with the late Dr. Henry Kissinger and Greg Mundy. This is just a short introduction. First question, I would like to have a broad vision of yours regarding how you would define the role of artificial intelligence in transforming our society.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank Blaise, who I've worked with for decades, Reed, who was here earlier, James, the usual suspects, and of course Cedric, who I think made a lot of this happen in France, so thank you. So I am reasonably convinced that we're going to now go through another transformation that most people have no idea will happen because it's going to happen so quickly. And when you think about what we talk about the development of artificial intelligence and language and ChatGPT and so forth. That's not where the action will be. The action will be when we're very close to general intelligence from computers. Today, the computers are pretty dumb, even the AI ones. You have to tell them what to do, they make mistakes and so forth. But most people in our industry think that this will get solved in the next 5, 6, 7 years, maybe sooner. And also that there is going to be a huge race between the West and China for AI dominance. So if you phrase it not as how does it affect our businesses and how does it affect daily life, which is important, but you understand that the arrival of a non-human intelligence on Earth is as important as the development of the printing press, right? That this is a massive change in how we work, how we live, our definition of humans, how we view ourselves, how we grow up, how we deal with each other. And that's what the latest book is about, which I'm pleased to say is now a New York Times bestseller. So,
congrats. We will go back in this geopolitical question in a moment. Could you share a specific example where AI solved a challenge that traditional technology couldn't address?
Well, the list of things that AI has already accomplished are well established. Vision systems, Blaise helped build these, so thank you. And I'm glad that you finally got to ride in your car that you built. Computers see better than humans, especially because they don't get drunk and they're not tired at night, right? So vision is solved. Things like the way libraries work and asking questions. There's a Google product called Notebook LM that you should try if you haven't tried it. First, it has an amazing podcast phenomena where it can make a podcast of people that don't exist. For me, Notebook LM is the ChatGPT moment of this year. I strongly encourage you to play with it. Notebook LM from Google. What you really do is you take all of the data that you know about something, so the videos, the text, the writings, pictures, and you put them in and you can ask it integrated questions. Think of it as a very, very good junior lawyer, junior assistant, junior analyst, junior engineer. So we're climbing this ladder. AI has solved essentially all games, right? So all of that has occurred. And more recently, Demis was one of the recipients of the Nobel Prize for the discovery of AlphaFold. So they published, after some work, 200 million proteins that are the basis of human existence, which is a major discovery. Now, each of these is a layer of discovery that is then built on. So the question is not, where are we now, which everyone's sort of learning, it's what happens next. And unlike groups like crypto, which seem sort of on the side, AI is a wave that has essentially affected the entire ocean. It's at a scale of the internet, of the PC, of communications in general, the telephone, because it's embedded in everything. So one way to think about it is that in 5 or 10 years, every single digital thing will have one of these foundation models that we talk about, maybe small, maybe very large, in it. So I know it sounds stupid, but you can talk to the light bulb and say, please turn yourself on. And it does. And it knows that you're talking to it. Things like that. Now that seems stupid, but the ability to concatenate these activities and actually assemble a decision process that is infinitely long, new drugs, solutions to climate change, new weapons, new conflict, new ways of communicating, the scale is immense.
I want to continue on the challenge of AI, and specifically a debate is rising about misinformation. How can we ensure this technology are used responsibly?
My own view, which is cynical, is that we have lost that battle. And the reason we lost it is we don't have a good definition of truth, and the governments and the businesses together are not willing to put in real restrictions on it. This is my personal view. And technically, misinformation makes perfect sense because the system is looking to gain something. It's designed to make something happen. And the quickest way to get you to get excited about something is to lie to you. To some degree, that's what marketing is. Like, you will look so much better in this car, right? And then when you get in the car, you look exactly the same, right? That's fine. We like advertising. But when you're trying to sell something, we now have the ability to convince you by showing you fact after fact after fact, or false fact, false fact, false fact. And in social media, you have a situation now where people who are unhappy or depressed or what have you will be in these holes where they're inside of it, and eventually they kill themselves. This is not okay. That needs to get regulated.
And how can we ensure that AI does not amplify human biases such as gender equality? That is a topic really important to mine.
I was surprised in America that I thought we had debated these questions and they had been resolved, at least for things like equality, in a European way. Again, showing you my own biases. But apparently I was wrong. And so the technical answer is that the system reads human information and therefore it has biases in it. And then the tech companies go and they eliminate those biases. So for example, if you have a racist network, it goes ahead and takes it out. The algorithms to get rid of the racism and so forth are fairly well understood. But the core problem is that the person who's building that network may in fact be prejudiced, and it may be in their interest to promote those prejudices against a race, a different color, a different sex, and what have you. And obviously that's not good, but societies don't seem to make it illegal to do so, and therefore it will continue.
Thank you. In your opinion, and this is a topic that we are discussing a lot today, what is the right balance between regulating AI and fostering innovation?
Well, as your American friends have told you before, and I'm sorry to be so brutally blunt, but what I find with European audiences is that Everyone agrees with me, and then nothing happens. So I'm going to try again. Europe is a wonderful place. The UK is a wonderful place. You are losing, and you're going to lose in the most important battle that is going to occur in your lifetime, which is the arrival of intelligence. Now, why are you going to lose? Because your regulatory structures are before the discoveries. So the correct answer is to have the regulations, as the previous panel discussed at some length, to show up at the right time. The instinct in Brussels, who I spent a decade fighting, so I have an opinion about Brussels, the instinct in Brussels is to regulate ahead because of some concern over privacy. By the way, I'm concerned about privacy too. Why don't you wait until the models actually occur and then regulate them? So I, like many people here, are investors in European firms and AI, and everyone is struggling with this. There's a further problem, if I can just, again, be completely blunt. Europeans' energy prices are too high to do the training in Europe. So whatever happens in Europe, the actual work will be done outside of Europe because your electricity prices are too high. We all understand why, and it's the Russians and all of that. And then the second thing is you don't have enough capital that's being put at risk. So let's consider our favorite person associated with President Trump right now, Elon. Okay. He has yet to deliver a sustainable business in X.AI. He's already raising another 10 billion or so for the more hardware that's needed. You can't do that in Europe. The entrepreneurs that I work with would love to have that opportunity. So you don't have the energy and you don't have the capital structure. And that means that Europe, and again, in the spirit of being completely direct, will be a derivative power in the sense that you'll take the models that are done elsewhere and then you'll distill them or otherwise fine-tune them for European sensibility, which is okay. You're going to make more money and have a bigger success and more control if you control the underlying work. And that's slipping away. And who is it slipping away to? The US companies and the Chinese companies. I spent a decade trying to slow down China's rise in this area. Clearly, I have failed, right? If you look at the models that are coming out in the last month, they're on par with the planning and reasoning tools that have been worked out so hard in the United States. So this is a race of a scale that is so much larger than I think we all conceive. And I want the West to win. I want France to be part of that. I want Britain to be part of it. Even the Germans. We'll hope for the rest of the Europeans, right? It's possible. There's no, and by the way, to be clear, when I was CEO, we put 10,000 incredible engineers to work in Europe. You have the people. It's a governance problem, it's an energy price problem, and it's a cash problem.
Continuing on this geopolitical implication, how is the growing investment in AI by the United States and China reshaping this strategic rivalry for global technological dominance?
Continuing my world domination argument, so let me explain what I think is going to happen, because it's going to happen really fast. Today, when you use AI, and again, let's use ChatGPT, Gemini 1.5, Notebook LM, any of those, what you're doing is essentially language to language. So you take a language command and you make something happen. There are roughly 3 things happening right now. The first is that you can take an arbitrarily long query, it's called the context window, and you can feed it in. So that means that you could take all the books in this abbey that exist and read them all at once and ask in French, what happened, right? Give me an analysis. That's a big deal. The second thing are called agents. And an agent is essentially, the way to think about it is it's a English language, French language command, a language model, and then it comes up with some scenarios, and it tries them, and then it evaluates them, and then it learns, and then it goes around in a circle. So I'll give you a stupid example. I tell the agent, turn off these lights, and the agent has no idea. So what it does is it flips all of the signals that it has, and it discovers that it's turned off the heat. Well, that's not good, so it turns that back on, and eventually it says, the light's off. I've now learned how to turn off the light. Then I say turn off the heat. Well, it's figured out a way to do that. And remember, this is going on 1,000,000 times a second. It's very, very fast. So the agent can learn to sort of do anything, and then it tells you what it did. And the third one is generally known as text-to-speech. Write me a program. So in this case, for example, you all, Cedric and your team, are putting on a thing. Here would be the command. Study France, learn how to read French, figure out who the smartest entrepreneurs are, figure out if they're all free on Friday, invite them to this Abbey. Oh, and by the way, call the Abbey and book it and pay the bill. Okay? Now, a human did that. So that's pretty simple. But another example, I want to build a misinformation campaign. So I say, make a person, let's pick a 25-year-old woman with 2 children, and she has a political view, let's say that she's racist. And I make that, and then I say, make 10,000 people similar, different kinds of backgrounds, all have the same racism, and promulgate that onto the social media. Now that tool will be available very soon to every human on the planet. And furthermore, the tool will do what you ask as programmers. Now, I managed programmers my whole life, and they never do what I ask. Okay, well, this is a programmer that will do exactly what I ask. And furthermore, it's a programmer that will do what each and every one of you ask. So why do I mention this? Because these are the building blocks for the intelligence race. And what happens there, remember, we have the agents, we have programming, we can have infinite context. It's all happening this year. All of a sudden, we can have a goal which says, learn everything, be smarter. And it just goes and it learns and it learns and it learns. So people believe that in 5 to 6 years, you'll have an expert, 90% of the best physics in the world, 90% of the best art, 90% of the next writer. So imagine going to a museum here in Europe and you have Leonardo da Vinci giving you advice. Oh, I don't like that painting, and he did a bad job there. You know, that would be your tour guide. Okay. So the next thing you do is you build, let's say I want to build a house here in France. I don't speak French, as you know. So I say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to figure out the nicest place for my house. I want you to figure out what the rules are. I want you to figure out what kind of a castle I can build. It's a small American castle that the French won't dislike. I want you to figure out how to get it approved. I want you to design it. I want you to hire the architect. No, we don't need an architect. You do the architecture. That is, the computer does the architecture because it knows about architecture. Oh, and by the way, I want you to hire the contractors, monitor the work, and finish the project. Let me know when you're done. I just described an entire industrial process involving lots of people, which can be integrated into these systems. You can imagine how this generalizes. Then there's one more thing, which I think people have not quite figured out. This is the slope we're on. The people who are building this are rare. They're math PhDs, brilliant, all around the world, and they're all working on this. But at some point, the AI scientist will show up. And the AI scientist will be like a human scientist. At that point, you can have 1 million of them. So what happens is the slope goes like this. That's the race. Now, to play in this race, you need thousands and thousands of humans, billions and billions of dollars or euros or what have you, and an awful lot of energy. Why is this so important? Because the group that gets there first has an advantage of innovation, security, world dominance. It's quite profound. And that's the race we're in. I'm convinced of it.
You already talk about Europe and our problem to maintain this competitiveness against global AI leaders. How can we tackle this issue? We have to be partners with more American, with more Chinese? What is
So a lot of this depends on what you think the world was going to look like. I assume that the US West versus China division will be the defining battle of our lives. If you look at China, and obviously I'm not endorsing it, dominant in batteries, dominant in electric vehicles, dominant, soon to be dominant in quantum, caught up in AI, even though we had lots of restrictions on them. They're driving countries crazy because they're subsidizing businesses, which eliminates the local competitor. You have a problem here in Europe of your car industry is very seriously threatened by very inexpensive car imports from China that are quite good. And you're sorting that out politically. So one way to understand this is that you have to work together. We have to do this among ourselves. And instead of trying to regulate, try to figure out a way to partnerships to solve these problems. So for example, one thing that you could do in France is you could say, we want to be the leaders in the agentic revolution. We want to build these agents to solve problems, right? Chemistry problems, drug problems, design problems, art problems, movie problems. All of that should be possible. And so what people will say is they want partnerships, which I'm in favor of. Where's the money? The foundation models is where the money is now, but eventually the money will all be above. There's an enormous amount of business to be founded there, and the Chinese are going after this because they're very capitalistic, even though they're not supposed to be. They move very, very quickly. You see American companies doing the same, an enormous number of startups. We need in France that ecosystem, and it has to happen now.
Thank you so much. To continue this conversation, I will call Matthieu COURTECUISSE. Matthieu COURTECUISSE is joining me on stage. Hello, please, you can take the mic. Matthieu, you are the founder and CEO of SEA Partners, a management, innovation, and AI consulting firm operating in over 20 countries. You have a comprehensive perspective on international issues related to AI development, and you have also a few questions for Eric Schmidt. I leave you the two. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you. Eric, if I may go back to your book, because I read it, and it's a wonderful book. I strongly recommend to buy it. I was thinking about these days are marking also the first anniversary of the death of Kissinger, and I would like to know, we are also here in a place where we can confess, and I would like to know how did it go in terms of collaboration, and if you have potentially one or two secrets to share with us, or key takeaways, because the mix is very impressive. Pretty much tech-savvy person as opposed to a pretty much geopolitics-savvy person. So do you have a couple of learnings for us?
Well, thank you. So Dr. Kissinger was my closest friend. I spent a decade working with him, and he was very interested in the impact of technology on society. He had, when he was an undergraduate, which is before any of us were born, and remember, he fought in World War II here and was given a bronze medal. So he went back to Harvard, where he wrote the longest thesis ever written at Harvard, strangely. And it was on Kant and the apparent question of truth and perception, sort of one of these discussions. And his view was that human societies needed to anchor on what they viewed as truth. And his view was that the arrival of AI was an epochal change. It was a change at the level of the Reformation, because it would force a difference between man and God, if you will. The notion of the age of reason would be replaced by the symbiotic mention between AI and humans, that the most successful humans will be humans plus AI working together. And he asked the question, in many, many different ways, what happens when the computer understands things that we humans do not? Are we the dog to their human? In other words, are we their masters at some level? And the book is an exploration of that. There are enormous implications when you take a very large number of people and you insert AI in the middle of it, positive and negative.
Yeah, I think he was also a big admirer of Immanuel Kant. And one of his famous quotes was also, to see the peace to reign on earth, humans must evolve into new beings to see the whole first. So that's part of the lessons, and that's all about Genesis, I think.
So in the book, we actually start by talking about polymaths and how discovery works. So if you look at the history of society, and it's appropriate here, a very small number of people who are incredibly brilliant have helped make the world we have. So Einstein, as I mentioned, Da Vinci, so forth, the great French philosophers. These are people of enormous reach. And now we have the tools for that in almost everyone's hands. That's a very big deal.
Yeah, and so Kissinger, who was also some kind of an expert with China, and so about your book also, you are talking about, you know, the battle between democracies and dictators, let's say dictatorships. What is the best ecosystem to take advantage of AI?
Well, Dr. Kissinger fought in World War II as an American citizen, even though he was a German. And when he opened up China in 1971, he was very aware that China, when it grew, could become a competitor. And in his mind, if the US, I'm just saying what he would say, if the US didn't play it right, we could end up in a world war. Because the United States doesn't understand how Chinese thought works. The Chinese are much more sort of theoretical in their thinking, and the Americans are much more, give me this, give me this, give me this. He would say the US makes lists, and the Chinese think about strategy and theory. And of course, he preferred the latter. But his particular view on this question was that the West needed to get to AI first, because the Chinese would see this in a geopolitical measure. And once we started to restrict access from China, China decided that we were trying to hold them back, which indeed we were. So we set up the tension. Now, he and I both believe that China is not about to invade Taiwan, which is not possible to know, simply because they're not strong enough. So sometimes in politics, diplomats understand that you don't have to resolve anything. Mao Zedong said, sorry, not Mao Zedong, his successor, said, we don't need to answer the Chinese question right now, the Taiwan question right now. We can take some time to answer it. So not everything needs to be answered immediately in global politics. And I think the relationship with China is going to be incredibly uncomfortable for Europe, for the United States, and for the Chinese themselves for that reason.
And as part of this battle, can we consider that the US big tech firms are just US or Western? Or can we, because you have been running a very, very large big tech company, do you think this is part of the DNA? Or can we say that there is a nationality behind it? Or could we consider that it's for the free world, let's say?
The big tech firms are very much US firms, and they have US attitudes. If I were European, I would view the American firms as hegemony against Europe, in the sense that the firms don't reflect the culture and the values. We call this doxa in the book, that we sort of run through them, if you will. And AI has an opportunity to make that better or worse. The AI systems can essentially enforce policies that have a particular cultural view, like a US view, or they can be multicultural. And the US firms that dominate need to make sure they do multicultural. But a reasonable prediction is that anything above basic hardware, the Chinese model will be very different than the Western model. The Western model is fundamentally about individual freedom, individual rights. Liberty is in the French liberty concept, which you all invented, individual power and so forth. The Chinese model is just different.
And maybe to go one step beyond, so in the EU we're going to enforce very soon the AI Act. It's obvious that there will be a couple of fines for US companies coming out with it. Do you think there is a risk with the new administration that it could apply some kind of restriction to access to technologies like they did for the Biden administration did for China?
To apply them against Europe? I think that's unlikely. In the American system, which is even crazier than Europe for obvious reasons, we don't know what the policies of the incoming president will be. And all of the people who've worked with President Trump know that he can change his mind quickly. So, and if you look at the people he's appointing in these positions, they're all new points of view and so forth. So before Europe becomes very worried about what's going to happen, I think it's fair to say we just don't know, and they may not know either. So the most likely scenario is that Brussels will continue to try to overregulate, that the gap between the United States, which under Trump is likely to be much less regulated than under Biden, will only get greater, and it'll be harder to have the conversations. There will obviously be some kind of administrative action against the tech companies, but Trump has announced that he wants to go after the big tech companies, but he hasn't announced why. And the fellow who he appointed in part of the FCC specifically went out against the big tech companies because of their regulation of speech, which is precisely what Europe would like to do. So it sure looks to me like there's going to be again, we don't know, a big division between the way in which the tech companies in the US are regulated or not, and the way they're regulated in Europe. And that gap is going to get bigger.
Okay, and on top of it, also we have the opportunity to deploy AI in multiple industries, including some that are quite heavily regulated. And as part of them, and we know that there will be a lot of discussion, you mentioned that before, around healthcare, biology, and so on, but it's also heavily regulated. And it's fair to say that over the last two decades, the deployment of internet within the healthcare systems has not been great in terms of productivity. We can see also, to take another example, Moderna, which is quite fair to say it's an AI-driven company. The valuation is pretty down right now, and some analysts are saying it's going to be between 10 billion to 1 trillion in terms of valuation, so hard to predict what's going to happen there. But do you think that the regulation in this particular area can play a key role to lock the innovation?
So again, you're asking lots of regulation questions. I only get them when I'm here. Okay, they're fine questions.
Yeah, but I live in New York, right? So,
but in New York,
yeah.
I don't get those questions.
No.
Right? I get them here, I don't get them in New York, right? So you want to understand the difference, that's the difference. Now let's go through this. So everybody here wants to live to 150. The way to do that is to discover drugs for longevity, to cure diseases, cancer, and so forth and so on. AI will allow us to accelerate that drug discovery incredibly fast. I already mentioned the discovery of proteins. There are now quite a few startups, including a number that I'm involved with, which essentially are trying to replicate what a drug designer does. So the way drugs are designed is they say, well, if I take this chemical and I add it to this protein and I put it into this way, and there's a long list of steps. So the computer can generate that list and it can evaluate them. And it can evaluate them because it already learned all of chemistry. So a key idea was you have a chemistry assistant and you run through all the drugs and it quickly says bad chemistry, bad chemistry, bad chemistry, good chemistry. Then it has a chance to win. That part, which has nothing to do with regulation, will create enormous numbers of drug companies, whether the big companies or the little companies. In the American system, the big companies, drug companies, don't do anything except distribute and test things. The real innovation occurs in startups, which they then do joint ventures with and so forth. That will happen very quickly. So when you talk about healthcare, you may also be talking about the administrative aspects, yep. The hospitals, the so forth and so on. And again, if I can just be blunt and cynical, the systems that are used to run medicine violate all of the computer science principles that we have learned to be correct. The databases are completely closed. There's no sharing among the players. You don't have an ability to move data around. You can't get the data and take it somewhere else, and so forth. So a number of us, Blaise and I, and a number of others at Google, spent years working on this problem, and we couldn't get through the industrial structure. In Europe, these databases are heavily regulated, and so it's highly unlikely that we'll be able to really get in there and make them more efficient. And that's, I think, the most likely answer. In the US, the way this has been solved is that these large systems are proprietary to the big healthcare companies. But remember that the US spends twice as much on healthcare for no better outcome than you do. So I do not copy the US.
Yeah, for sure. So as part of the breakthroughs we can see right now, and you talked about it, like AI agents. So it's very likely that we will be equipped by 2 or 3 years with like 20, 30 AI agents, even in our personal lives, maybe more. It should be the same in companies, in organizations. You have been very instrumental in the fast deployment of the go-to-cloud over the last 10, 15 years. Do you think it's going to be easy for the organizations to absorb the number of potential AI agents we're going to have in our daily lives of professionals?
The way the agents will come is, first there will be entertainment agents that are fun, but the real work will be using agents in business processes. So building something, designing something, researching something which is hard and is worth a lot of money. That's where most of the effort will be. And those agents will be highly positive for the company. They generate more money, more gross margin, more reach, so forth and so on. They're just smarter. And they're smarter than the humans because they have infinite memories and they're learning 24 hours a day. So I think that what will eventually happen is you'll have the equivalent of an agent store. And you'll have millions of agents that you can assemble. And the current architecture of agents is that they speak in English, in our case, English to English to English. So they get the first step done, and they say what they did, and then it goes to the next agent and next agent. Those are workflows. So from you all's perspective, today you have workflows in your business where you have this person does this person does this person does this, so forth. You want to think of that as being replaced by non-human agents. And the humans then supervise. By the way, the obvious question here is what happens to all the humans? All the evidence is that you need more humans because your business expands and you're making more money. And they don't replace the people, the jobs change, but fundamentally, there's more people, not fewer people employed because of this.
So do you think it's going to be as fast as it has been for the cloud migration?
Well, everyone assumes that the cloud is the basis for all of this. If you are not able to use the cloud for some regulatory reason, then you'll fundamentally have your own local cloud and your own local agent. So the answer, I think that the fiber optic revolution, the PC revolution, the CPU revolution, the GPU revolution, the internet revolution, they're all assumed to be correct and successful. They're not going to get replaced. They build on top.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Maybe.
Thank you very much, Eric. Merci à tous. Je crois qu'on vient de vivre un moment formidable. Thank you very much, Eric, to being with us this morning. Bravo, Matthieu. Merci beaucoup à Matthieu COURTECUISSE. Merci à Cynthia Ilouz. Et c'est l'occasion de vous dire, mais je crois que vous l'avez vraiment senti, que vous êtes en train de participer à un moment, comme moi, exceptionnel. Je veux vraiment qu'on fasse une ovation à Eric, à tous les orateurs de ce matin. Mes chers amis, on se retrouve juste après la pause déjeuner. Il y a bien sûr tout ce qu'il vous faut à l'extérieur, un food truck si vous voulez manger rapidement. Et je vous dis à tout à l'heure 14h.